Hi guys, welcome back. This time around I'm bringing you yet another single DD monster review, but this time around the single DDs are all what I would consider IM's tunes, completely opposite to the more Harman style tune that we have seen become popular over the last 2 years or so. These are IMs from a couple brands. I've got here the Sivga Q, I've got here the Ear Acoustic SPA Pro, I've got here the venerable Venture Electronics C, I've got here an IM which is no longer available, which is a WTG1. I've got here the Aria. I've got two versions of the Aria, although they are exactly the same IM. I've got here the Sivga Q UTG, and I've got here the IVipQ N820. The Aria and the Sivga Q UTG are two IMs in terms of review by me. The rest I've reviewed in the past. But anyway, it wouldn't make sense to talk about these two and not have the other ones here to position them and for you guys to better understand where they sit or where they don't sit. Anyway, just a quick rundown. The original Sivga Q costs around $65 to $75, depending on which time of the you are buying it, if you're getting a discount on it or not. It uses a beryllium driver. It's tuned in a very old school kind of manner, like all of these are, which their characteristic is the fact that they have an emphasis on the mid bass, okay, and the other thing is that then they have an emphasis placed on the upper mids and treble, kind of giving them a V-shaped type of signature, if you want. The intensity of that upper mids and treble is then what the other factor which differentiates them into two groups. These ones here, so the WTG, the IVipQ, and the UTG from Sivga are more energetic in that part of the spectrum, while the Arya, the Venture Electronics, the SPA Pro, and the original Sivga Q are more relaxed. I just want to get here the just put up here the diagram of the Sivga Q. Yeah, that's exactly. As I was saying, they all have this mid-bass emphasis, which makes them very fun, very engaging, and also confer them a very organic type of presentation. Maybe those ones that are a little bit more emphasized in that upper mids and treble might be a little bit fatiguing for some, might bring out some harshness in those treble areas of 4, 5, 6K to some of us. But overall, the fun and engaging, that's guaranteed. It's got loads of powerful slam. The vocals have got this lush feel to them on all of them. And ultimately, I think these are IMs for people that want to have fun with their music, as opposed to want to listen to the last twinkle and sparkle and detail available and possible. That's not to say that some of them are not also technically capable, but I think the premise here with all of these IMs is to be fun, engaging, entertaining IMs to listen to get you going. As I was saying, so we've got the original Sivga Q, about $65 to $75, beryllium coated diaphragm. Really nice sound, maybe a little bit on the darker side up top of the frequency range, but very nice sound. Next to that, I've got the Ear Acoustic, the SPA Pro. It uses that 11.4 millimeter driver, but with a graphene diaphragm instead of the titanium diaphragm. It's a resin shell. It costs $99. Again, the sound that we get out of the Ear Acoustic is a very engaging sound in terms of the mid bass and the mids. Maybe again the issue here will be a slight darkness up top, but overall very entertaining. Venture Electronics C, one of my favorite IMs. I think that says it all. Yes, it's got a lot of bass, and that a lot of bass can sometimes camouflage things, but because they chose a good quality driver, it's an aluminum, if I'm not mistaken, it's an aluminum composite diaphragm or something of sorts. It's actually quite clear and clean in its mid-range and upper frequencies, and so it's not as dark as maybe you would think by seeing the graph. Next to that, another IM which no longer is available, which is WTG, that was also around about the same $100 price bracket. which I think was maybe at the time when it was available a little bit misunderstood, and few people really got what the WTG was capable of doing. Yes, it again suffered by having a little bit of that upper mids and treble a little bit of emphasized, but in this particular case, because it's been energized, you don't see or you don't feel that the extension past 10k is perhaps missing as much as it's missing in the case of, for example, like I was saying earlier, the air acoustic and of the original Sivga Q. Then I've got here the Aria. Why do I have two Arias? Well, I've got here the Aria because this was the version that originally was available, if I'm mistaken, with the anime, and then this was the version that they subsequently launched, which doesn't have the anime on the faceplate. I personally prefer this version as opposed to the one with the anime. It is what it is. The interesting and cool thing about the Arya is that not only does it come with this fantastic cable, really nice build, it's got a good quality driver as well inside there, but it's also got exchangeable nozzles which do confer a little bit of adjustment to the sound. The brass and silver nozzles have their place, but I prefer the blue nozzle. I've got here with the silver and I've got here with the blue, but I prefer the blue nozzle, although maybe overly dark at times. I still prefer the sounds the blue nozzle gives because it keeps things more manageable somehow, and for some reason which I can't really understand with the silver or with the gold nozzle. Although the level of the upper mids, of the mids to upper mids and upper mids to treble is not that much higher than with the blue, it has a tendency of maybe shouting at times, almost shouting at times, which makes it a little bit fatiguing. So that was the only nitpick that I really had here with the Arya. But I'll get into that in a little bit in a little while. Next to that, the Sivga UTG. This is oh, I forgot to mention, this is around $70. $79, sorry, my apologies. The Sivga UTG, this is the Q UTG. This is the latest one, so an upgraded Q. What they have got here is a flat glass diaphragm with a separate surround, which was a surprise, I have to say. Was a surprise. Yes, it's got plenty of detail up top, plenty of energy in that upper mids to treble area, coupled with basically the same sort of bass that we already had in the original Sivga Q, but at times that extra energy that it has can be borderline aggressive, especially if you are sensitive in that area there of 4 or 5 kilohertz. You might feel it being just a little bit too much. I think that if they had perhaps brought down that area ever so slightly, it would have been better. Okay, but again, I'll get into that in a little bit. And then finally, the IVipQ NA20. This is around $119. Again, following the tuning that IVipQ does, which is a tuning which is very much focused on stage and live presentations. This being the NA is the audiophile version, so not as emphasized in the upper mids and treble, contrary to the NM, which is the monitor version, which has got more energy. Either one of them have their place, obviously, but I prefer the NA. I think the NA is the more balanced one of the two. And by balance, let's keep in mind the following. By balance, I mean I like an IM to be capable of playing this more or less the same at mid to at low to mid volumes, and then at mid volume to high volume. And some of these IEMs, yes, at lower volumes they are fantastic, they shine, but then they lose their composure when the volume goes up. And then there's others that at lower volumes they sound a little bit dead, and they actually gain by being pushed slightly. So at mid to high volumes they actually come alive and sound more balanced. Anyway, jumping straight into it, let's start here with the Arya. The Arya, as I was saying, it's been around for a while, and I've had the Arya, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months. I don't really recall now. It's part of a whole new generation of IMs that CVJ has released in terms of single DDs. It was then followed by a collaboration with R2E3, which is the Mermaid, and now they've also got another version of the Mermaid, which is called the Medusa. Or another version of the R2, or another IM from R2E3 as well, in collaboration with CVJ, which is the Medusa, and they all have the common aspect, which is they've got this nice engaging mid bass presence, and it's really very engaging. I mean, there's a gain in terms of the bass which peaks at around the plateau of 60 to 100 hertz. There's a gain there which is of roughly 6 dBs, and it peaks between that band of frequency of 60 to 100 hertz, and then it continues, but then slowly dropping off, and then being flat almost by 1 kilohertz, or reaching the lowest point by almost 1 kilohertz. What that means is that whole area there of 100 to 450 hertz especially is really thick, it's really pronounced, and gives a lot of impact and liveliness to drums and stuff like that. Yes, it does have the negative aspect, which is because it bleeds into the mids, it camouflages the vocals a little bit too much, especially female vocals. Male vocals maybe might make them a little bit excessively husky, but overall, this is, in my opinion, that is not an IEM for those looking for clarity in terms of vocals, and that want to obtain and listen the ultimate in twinklies and sparklies. Now, there's just too much mid-bass impact, which is fun and engaging for EDM, for rock, for pop, to make audiophile listening a reality, which can be done, let's say, acceptably well. Yes, okay, fine, you could EQ, and if you want to EQ, obviously you will be able to resolve that problem. But we are talking about the IEMs as they sound stock, as they come. The silver nozzle and the brass nozzle, like I mentioned, they have a tendency of then making that area there of between, I would say, 4 and 7K especially, sound a little bit excessively bright. It's not really the little bit of extra energy they have at 2 to 3 as compared to the blue nozzle. That's the problem. It's higher up where you notice that sibilance, which is a little bit annoying, and it just, the moment you put up the volume just a little bit, it goes from being an IM, which at low volumes is very pleasant to listen to at mid volumes you're already starting to have some issues with that aggressiveness and that harshness of the sound, to being very harsh actually at higher volumes, especially with certain genres. It can be a little bit, stuff like trumpets, air instruments, especially Up and Up from Jeff Ryan, for example, comes across very, very intense. Not a pleasurable listen. But look, it's like I say, if you listen to the right music or to the right songs with this IM, and if you use the blue nozzle, then yes, then a lot of these issues are resolved, if not completely resolved. If anything, actually, Up and Up from Jeff Ryan with the blue nozzle, the problem then is because it comes down. The way that the mids to upper mids and then treble are perceived, they come down so much in energy as compared to the bass that it maybe even borderline makes it dark. But truth be told, with the blue nozzle, if you actually push the volume, because of that scaling imbalance that happens here, the scaling imbalance is actually favoring the Aria. So I would say that to wrap up with regards to the Aria, I would say the silver and the brass nozzles are not really nozzles that I would recommend for higher volume listening. If you are going to listen to a lower volume, then fine. I would say the silver nozzle will probably be more than sufficient. If you're going to listen to higher volumes, then definitely the blue nozzle will resolve that problem, but keeping in mind that at lower volumes it will sound overly dark or overly warm, and maybe can lead to some fatigue because of you lacking that a little bit of extra detail that you're looking for. Technically, I mean, look, timbre and tonality, because of the overemphasized bass, it's not going to come across 100% correct. Soundstage and imaging as well are not the ideal. It's always the perception of a closed venue with regards to how the Aria sounds. But look, it's like I was saying earlier. The Aria was meant, or in my opinion, was supposed to be a fun and engaging listen. And in that aspect, yes, they've ticked the right boxes. It's a fun, it's an engaging listen. It's got its place, it's got its market, and at least I applaud CVJ for not having been afraid to try a different tuning. They could have gone the safe route and just tuned this thing, the more Harman style, and be done with it. That's it. No, they decided to do it their own way, and they did it nicely, and it works, and that's it. Okay. Now, the Sivga UTG. This is I think an impressive attempt at using a novel technology, which is this flat glass fiber diaphragm. I wasn't able to find too much information, but look, in terms of the build and the care they took to make sure that the UTG does justify its price is there. I mean, it's a beautiful metal shell. I believe it's CNC machined. Amazing driver technology internally, and then good cable, good accessories. There's really not much I can point as a negative aspect. Brings a nice case as well. This is the case. Okay, brings a nice case with a good selection of tips. So in that department, much like the Arya, they've ticked the right boxes, and the price as well it's well suited to keeping in mind what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, like I said, $79 for the Arya with this nice cable, with the accessories that it brings, the exchangeable nozzle, everything. That's a good value. There's no denying that. And as well, yeah, with the UTG, nice cable, exchangeable terminations, good amount of tips, nice case, beautiful build, fits well. Good technology in terms of the driver being used. You can't really complain. $100, again, not much money when you consider all of these things. As for the sound, this UTG belongs to this second group of IEMs that in the second subgroup of IEMs that are here, which is the subgroup where that area then of the upper mids to treble is emphasized. In terms of the bass, phenomenal bass. It's got that nice thick engaging bass that we also got, for example, in the Arya. I would even probably say more of it because of the extra amount of energy, not only, but because of the fact that they had then to counteract it with all that upper, mid, and treble energy. They gave it a little bit more to balance it out, but it works. It works. It doesn't sound in any way or form as muffled or as dark as the Arya sounds with the blue nozzle, for example. No, if there's one thing that the UTG definitely does sound is open and clean. Yes, there is a certain amount of bleed into the mids, but again, it's very, very well mitigated by that extra energy that they gave. I mean, we are talking about the peak of the bass to the peak of the treble area. We are talking about a difference of close to 7 dBs. So there's a big chunk of extra energy there, and that chunk of energy starts at around 2.5 and ends at about 5-6 kilohertz. And that chunk of energy, if it didn't have the bass that it has from behind, then this would have been a shout fest, trust me. So the balance that they've struck, although looking at the graph you might think, okay, nothing that impresses me, it's been well done. The only problem that I found in the UTG, to be totally frank, was if at low volumes it's probably I would dare say probably on par with the NA 20, the best IEM here. At mid volumes, it's still able to keep that performance going. At higher volumes, it kind of falls apart because that area then of the upper mid to treble just becomes too much, and no matter how much bass is coming from behind, it's piercing. It kind of shouts, which is something that doesn't happen, for example, in the NA20, only for the reason that the NA20 has got basically the same mid bass energy, but it's got more energy of bass below 100 hertz, and that amount of extra energy that it has, and when I show you the graphs you'll see how similar they actually are, and that amount of energy that it has from behind is actually capable of keeping up with all the energy that it has in that upper mid and to treble region. So while this one is capable of scaling very nicely, the scaling on the UTG, on the Q UTG, I think is a little bit, I would have liked, like I said earlier, I would have liked them to just have brought down that 4 to 5K area just a little bit. If they had brought down that 4 5K area just ever so slightly, I think the performance that we would have gotten out of the Sivga UTG would have been completely different, and would have been significantly up there with the best that are here. Having said that, of course, the performance that it has will please people, or certain people will enjoy it. It is capable of a high degree of technicalities. It's probably a par again with the NA20. It's probably one of the IEMs here that's got the best amount of twinklies and sparklies up top. So micro detailing and macro detailing is pretty decent. Soundstage is not bad as well. Imaging not bad. Only the tone and only the timbre and the tonality maybe suffer a little bit here and there by being overly thick sometimes in the bass, but still, it's like I say, like I've said earlier, the balance that they've been able to strike between the bass and the thickness that is present in the bass, and then the amount of energy that you have in that 2.5 to 2.53 to 6 kilohertz area is been well struck. It has. It's definitely been well struck. Makes it sound very balanced for the majority of the listening volumes that I think most will hear, and for the majority of expectations, I think. If obviously you are going to be looking for the ultimate in terms of resolution, or the ultimate in terms of correctness and so on and so forth, none of these IEMs are going to be doing that. That's the reality. They were not designed to be the ultimate. But as I said earlier, there are IEMs here that have or that shine in certain areas. If, for example, let's say you want a energetic, fun, engaging performance which has a high level of let's say technicalities and engagement, and only loses out in terms of how it scales, then the UTG is definitely there. Comparing the UTG with the original Q, you definitely see that there's more energy here in those upper mids and treble as compared to the original Q. Again, the Q was using a beryllium driver, and I think that they purposely tuned it in that manner so that the beryllium wouldn't shout, because the beryllium has a tendency of introducing a certain timbre that can be a little bit aggressive. So there is more energy there in the UTG as compared to the original Q. That's different. As compared to the ear acoustic, again, the UTG does sound more proficient in terms of how much detail it has and that energy that it has, especially past 10K, where both of these as well fall behind. Comparing it with the NA, I would say the NA is probably edging it out by the fact that it just scales better. And by scaling better, you can listen to it at more varied volume levels. But other than that, the performance is very similar, apart maybe from a little bit more extra low bass, so more low bass rumble on the NA as compared to the UTG, but not a big difference. The big differentiating factor between these two is more the fact that this doesn't scale as well as this. Compared yet to the T1, it's already an older IM. I would say yes, the T1 is maybe capable of being a little bit more balanced out in that upper mid to treble transition. It's got basically the same sort of bass performance by having been tuned with less energy, and so that area there of 3, 4, 5 doesn't jump forward too much and allows it to scale better. I think the biggest issue here with the UTG, honestly, is that the scaling uh, is not the ideal because of that extra amount of energy that they gave in that particular part of the spectrum, which is beneficial at lower volumes and at mid volumes as well, but at higher volumes, not the ideal. As compared to the CA, I mean, it's a phenomenal IEM. Yes, it doesn't have the same amount of detail as the UTG, but overall, I think the CA from Venture Electronics is a more rounded out IEM than what the UTG is. It scales well. Actually, it's one of the IEMs that, apart from the Aria as well, it's the two IEMs here that the more volume you give it, the better it comes alive. Let's put it that way. It's at lower volumes. Okay, they sound fine. Obviously the CS sounds better than the Aria, but where you start seeing it shining is when you really crank up the volume. Guys, and that's basically it. I mean, I don't want to make this too long. I think I've basically placed these two IEMs well with regards to some of the IEMs that are available. They follow the same sort of signature, like I said. I'll show you now the graphs quickly so you can see. But the takeaway, I think, yeah, is the Arya is a fun, engaging IEM that will be at its best using the blue nozzle, which at lower volumes might be maybe a little bit too tame or too overly dark, but will come alive once you crank up the volume. The UTG, on the other hand, the QUTG, because of the driver that's being used and the way that they tuned it, it sounds phenomenal at lower volumes and at mid volumes. It sounds really, really good. Loads of detail. Like I said, on Arya with the NA20, it's probably the most detailed, capable IEM. Yeah, technicalities are really, really good. Soundstage imaging, it's really, really good. It just then becomes not as ideal as I would like, at least in my ears, mind you. This is my experience in my ears, as it starts becoming overly intense in that 2.5, 3 kilohertz up to about 6 kilohertz. It just becomes overly intense, and it's not a pleasant listen anymore. I would say yes, maybe by using foam tips you can help control that. Maybe choosing a warmer sounding source, you can also help mitigate a little bit of that, or then ultimately just EQing it, and that's that. But I think it would have been it's a pity that Sivga just didn't maybe provide a switch to lower that area a little bit extra, or just retune it differently. But then again, the reality is this: Sivga, much like CVJ, well, much like any one of these IEMs, yeah, they've got their own tuning style, and that's the tuning style they opted for, and that's what they wanted to do, and that's it. You either like it or you don't like it. If you don't like it, you don't buy it, and if you like it, you buy it. It's as simple as that. Anyway, guys, let me now quickly show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, guys, let's talk now graphs. Okay, let me just quickly get here first the CVJ, so we get this out of the way. Okay, that's the CVJ with the blue nozzle, and that's the CVJ with the silver or with the brass nozzle. They basically are the same, so it's no point in putting both of them. As you can see, the difference between them is just a little bit changed. There's 2-3K, and then this 5 to 8K, a little bit of a difference. But although graphically it doesn't look like there's much of a difference, sonically you do hear and you do feel that as you push the volume on the Arya with those nozzles, it just shouts too much. It no longer becomes a pleasant listen. And I think mainly one of the other reasons that this can possibly also be the case is there's basically no damping on that nozzle, the silver and the brass nozzle. They basically have no damping on it, and that's why you're getting the full let's say performance of the driver coming out with no filtering or nothing. With the blue nozzle you have a little bit of filtering, which kind of controls things, plateaus things a little bit better. You can see that peak there at 8. The 100 hertz here corresponds just completely is on top of that whole upper mid and treble area. Loads of energy here. Yes, at lower volumes it can sound a little bit thick, but once you push up the volume it actually is quite engaging and entertaining. So that's it. That's the Arya. Now let me show you originally the first Sivga, the Q. This was the Q. Again, it also had thickness in the mid bass presence, but it was lacking a little bit here in terms of treble, and it sounded a little bit dark. It was an interesting listen. It was engaging. I think it was down to like I said earlier, because of the using a Beryllium driver, they didn't want it to become shouty. That 100 hertz point there, like I say, corresponds to almost 2K, but because it's got that nice thick mid bass, the overall presentation is a warm presentation, very organic, very old school. With the Sivga UTG, they basically kept a bit of the bass present. They've extended how the mid bass kind of continues, okay, in terms of energy, entering the lower mid. So yes, it would, by the graph, you would think, oh, okay, maybe this is making the mid sound too muddy or too dark, but no, because they've given this area here of the upper mids and treble loads of energy, and all of this helps kind of mitigate this possibility of muddiness that is from behind, and makes the presentation very engaging, very clean, very detailed. But the problem is when you scale it, when you start increasing the volume, this area, yeah, just comes out too much. It's just too much. Yes, soundstage and extension past 10K is phenomenal. Imaging, all of that is really, really good. It's just, I just wish that they had maybe just lowered a little bit. Yeah, this 4 to 5. If they had kind of plateaued this a little bit here, I think the overall balance would have been a nice one. If you notice here then carefully as well here on the way the pin again is done, it's got a little bit of that meta vibe going here. So it doesn't rise and then peak, and so no, it kind of rises in a two-step. Okay, that did help not make the vocals overly forward. Look, it's like I was saying, the only real issue with the UTG is the fact that it just is not scaling, in my opinion, in the most ideal of manners. That's really only the only issue. Comparing now, for example, the UTG with the WGT1, which is no longer available, you can see that there's a lot of similarities in terms of how the bass has been done, but the T1 has got less energy here in that area that I was mentioning that can be a little bit of a problem, and that makes the whole then experience way more satisfying. And then even the possible sibilance that might occur here at 5K, because of the bass energy that comes from behind being significant, it mitigates it, and the overall listen is at higher volumes is really, really good. At mid and low volumes, the UTG is a superior IM. Compared here to the NF Acous NA20, again, very similar style. You can see that they kind of have the same sort of peaks, a little bit of a two-step as well here in terms of how the gain is done, but a little bit less energy here in this area, which can be problematic, the 3, 4, 5K area, okay, on part of the NA20, and it's got way more energy below 100 hertz, so you feel it rumble more. This helps mitigate any possible mishaps that can come from this area here, and the overall sound is very, very balanced. I mean, honestly, this is not me trying to push one IM or not push the other, but the NF Acous, the NA20, definitely is one of the IEMs here, if not the IEM that's the most balanced, the one that ticks the most right boxes. It does the most things right, because like I said, they all have this thickness in the bass, they all have this emphasized upper mid and treble, and this one is the one that does everything probably the best, at low volumes, mid volumes, and at high volumes. Alrighty, so we can take that out. And then just comparing quickly the Sivga with the CVJ, and I'll just show it with the blue. Okay, as you can see, the CVJ it's got very similar sort of bass. It's not the CVJ doesn't have a good bass. It's got a really, really good bass. It's just that with the way that it's been tuned, I think it's down to the driver, honestly. The CVJ's driver is not as capable as the driver of the UTG, so if they had given it more energy, it would have even shouted more than what it already shouts when you start scaling it, when you start pushing the volume. With the blue nozzle, which is what we have here, actually, let me just change the color so you guys can see a little bit better. Let me make it black. There you go. Okay, so the CVJ in terms of the bass is very much like the UTG, the Q. It's there in this area that it's significantly less energetic, so it sounds muffled, almost dead by comparison. I think the ideal here would have been like a midpoint between the two of them. That would have been the ideal, the perfect, almost perfect solution. It would have brought up the energy of what the Arya can sound like, and brought down the energy of the Sivga Q UTG, and kind of made an IM that could have scaled better, because that's where then the Arya kind of beats the UTG. Is it's capable of scaling really good. It's never going to be as detailed as the UTG. Let's make that perfectly clear. But it scales better. Okay, that's the reality. It scales better. You push the volume and it actually comes alive better. And that's it, guys. I hope I'm not boring you too much. I hope I was able to give a decent overview of these IMs. And that's that. If you have any questions, or if you would like to ask me anything, please feel free to do so. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.